Okay, so I've been really enjoying this new cutter. However, I did notice one slight adjustment that I need to make. I'm pretty sure the back gauge Gibs are a little loose, so today I want to tighten up the Gibs so there's no play in that back gauge, and also do some lubrication. Let me show you what I mean. It's very slight, but this back gauge on the outside edges is moving almost a millimeter. That's no big deal. This is just regular maintenance that needs to be tightened up. So with this adjustment, we're gonna have to do two things. One is tighten the Gibs so there's less play, and then two, square up the back gauge. Let's take off this plexiglass on top here first so we can get in there. All right, now what we need to do also is check to see if it's loose at different spots. Hopefully it's loose everywhere. If there's play at one spot and not another, that's going to mean that's going to be bad news. That's going to mean that the guide that it runs on is worn unevenly. So let's run this thing back, take a look back here. That's good news. It's loose back here too. So now let's take a look underneath here and I'll show you what the Gibs are. The Gibs are two plates. There's one on either side and then one on the bottom here that can be adjusted closer or further away from this guide. So all we have to do is loosen up these lock nuts and slowly move this in until there's no play. Well, that already made a big difference, and I only turned those screws, well, you saw, just a little bit. It doesn't take much in all to tighten that up. And the reality is, too, the clearance between the Gibs and the guide is so tight that just putting grease on there will often stiffen that up and solve the problem. So I want to take care of that as well now. And don't forget the bottom. And the other side you can get from the top here. It's the easiest way. Before we continue greasing, I want to tighten these lock screws. While we're working on this, we might as well grease it. That's weird. Oh boy. That was way too difficult to get off. Wow. I guess I need a new tip or something. 'Cause that's crazy. And there's two more down below. Oh, that came off easier. When you're down in here greasing the side of the Gib, I know you wanted to just put grease on that lead screw, but don't do it. You should only oil those. Grease is too thick. But let's put a little bit of oil on that lead screw. And then run the gauge back and forward a couple times. Perfect. Another thing to keep in mind while you're adjusting the Gibs, you can over tighten those, and it's a lot easier with a manual back gauge to tell if you've over tightened it because it becomes too hard to turn. With the automated back gauge connected to the motor here, you kind of just have to listen and see how fast the back gauge is moving. If you over tighten it, you will make the motor struggle, and you're going to cause excessive wear on your Gibs and your motor and belt and other things. So there's a very fine line between too tight and too loose. You got to find a good spot in between. Let's put some grease on the front, the knife Gibs. These 3 bolts actually tighten the Gibs that holds this knife. So just put a little bit of grease right there. That doesn't need to be adjusted, so we don't have to worry about it, but same exact process as the Gibs for the back gauge. I ought to be able to find a couple spots that could be oiled. Might as well take the back cover off. I know there's some pins up top here that I could probably oil. Just a tip, I always leave the top center screw of any panel I'm taking off in because then it just hangs by that one instead of leaving just one on the side here that it's all, it just makes it a little easier. And I forgot to mention that you can also grease the Gibs for the clamps. So there's actually 3 Gibs on here. I forgot about the clamps. That just goes right on there. Same on the other side. Okay, back to oiling. Right there's a red spot. Drop some oil in there. Got this spot. I'm gonna put a little extra, just a drop on either side. You can see right here, this is where the back of the knife rides. So Just a little grease. Okay, and now last of all, let's check whether or not this is square this way. I'm hoping that just tightening the Gibs is just going to work out perfect and I won't have to move anything. Okay, so it's fairly simple how we check this. Let's just bring this into like 15. And what we're going to want to do is cut this stack of paper and then flip it over here to the other side so that this outside cut is going to be on this outside over here. And that's going to tell you whether or not that back gauge is square or not, if one side's cutting a little bit more than the other side. Now, I still have my old blade in here, so my blade is going to come down about a ½ inch from the end, but I'll still be able to test this. Okay, that's a good sign. Pretty much cut at the same spot, but that does mean that this side could be shorter than this side, so now we got to cut this side and flip it and do the same. I think it's my lucky day. That's great, so I don't even have to adjust it. Oh, you know what? I'll show you what to do if you need to adjust it. So there's bolts on either side here with locking nuts. And those you drive in or drive out depending on which way you need to move this. And also this bolt right here, maybe this one. One of these is a locking bolt, so you have to loosen that in order to move it. But again, you're only going to need such a fraction of an adjustment here if it's out a little bit. But when you're all said and done and everything here is tightened up and those bolts and your Gibs are tight, that thing's rock solid. And don't forget to record what you did in your maintenance log. I get to retire everything I did since 2018. No, sorry, 2008. From 2008 to 2020. Blade changes, motor change, buttons that were fixed, filter and fluid. It's all right there. I might actually give that to whoever I sell the cutter to. Let's start a new one here. And I've been meaning to ask too, for anybody else that has this model cutter, I notice when I have it on, this fan back here turns on and stays on for the whole time, which is fine, I guess, but it's really not needed unless I'm running it. So I'm thinking about changing the wiring so that the fan will turn on. I either put a thermostat on here or something else, because I'd kind of like to just leave this thing on all the time, but I have been turning it off. But I don't know, I feel like that fan should be a little smarter than just running all the time. I really need to pick up a filter for this, just because I don't know when that filter was changed, and I'd like a starting point, but I'll run and get one of those at some other point in time. But yeah, that's basically the general maintenance and squaring up the back gauge on the cutter. In case you're interested. Oh yeah, for some reason, the toner price on my 1200 here, it went from like $60 a container to now it's like 120, close to 120 bucks a container, which is insane. Not exactly sure why that happened, but I scoured the internet and I found 2 places, and I just bought 8 and 4 at $60 a piece, just because I don't know if they're jacking the prices or something else, but I just stocked up just in case. So might want to look into that. Dude, cutters with an automatic back gauge that you can put programs in, they're totally worth it. Saves a ton of time. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.